The first program I went into was called Double Your Revenue. And the plan was to come up with a roadmap to double your revenue from whatever it was when you came in to some point in the future, whatever it is you set up. And it was a very detailed roadmap. I was able to double my firm's revenue in about 18 months.
My name is Tyler Dolph. I am the CEO of Rocket Clicks, which is our law firm-focused marketing agency. We also own and operate Sterling Lawyers, which has grown to over 30 attorneys across 2 different states. Today, we have Richard West of West Family Law out of Orlando, Florida. Richard has an incredible story. He has an amazing experience building a boutique firm that is focused on very complicated, high net worth divorces. He has a great story about how he got into building a family law firm that all kind of started with one question from a professor way back in the day. Make sure to check it out. I think you will really enjoy this one. Richard, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm really excited to learn more about you and your firm. Could you give us a little overview of your firm as it sits today? And then I'd obviously love to turn back the clock and learn more about how you came to be here.
You bet. Thank you, Tyler. I practice in a boutique family law firm, West Family Law Group in Orlando, Florida. Including myself, we have 3 other lawyers, 2 of whom are board certified, and the third has extensive experience. He's been a lawyer for over 20 years. We handle, for the most part, a high-end clientele, complicated litigation. We do collaborative practice, and because it's required in Florida, an awful lot of mediation as well.
Sure. Yeah, that seems to be the case with the AAML family. Really successful law firms that handle more of those complex divorce cases. Have you been in the AAML for a long time, and are you really enjoying that experience?
Yeah, it helped build my practice. We'll talk about that some more when I get to it. But I think I'd have to go out and look, but I'm going to say, I don't know, since the early 90s, so however many years, that is. I think more than 25 and less than 30 is the best I can do without going to look at the certificate.
That's fair. I appreciate it. Well, yes, let's start from the beginning. Have you always had your own firm, or how did you get started in the law space?
I have always had my own firm. If we go way back, after my first semester in law school, I had finished number 1 in my class, so I was offered a clerkship with what was then the largest law firm in Houston. And after 4 or 5 weeks of that, I hated it so much that I said, I will never work for anybody else in the law business as an attorney. So from the day I got my license, I was on my own. And, I'm sure it slowed down the learning. But I
or sped it up.
Well, no. I mean, because, I didn't have in-house mentors to look to. If I had an issue that came up, I had to figure it out myself. So I think from that standpoint, it probably slowed me down a little. In any event, I spent the first 5 years of my practice in Houston doing criminal defense work. And then my father, who was an attorney, asked me if I'd be interested in moving to Central Florida and opening up an office for him doing insurance defense work. And I did. I came here in late 85, I think December of 85, got licensed in sometime in 86. And after a few months of doing insurance defense work, I wanted to put a gun in my mouth. I really did. And so what happened, I became a family lawyer by accident. Totally
big pivot.
I'm sorry?
I mean, big pivot, like totally different operational.
Yeah, so here's the story. My closest friend from law school days, he and I are still friends today, had already moved back to Florida before I did, a couple of years before I did. And he called me up one day and said, hey, I go to this American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers seminar in Tampa every year. It's a great seminar. Why don't you sign up and, we'll get to hang out in Tampa for the weekend and have a good time. So I did. And it was a great seminar. and enjoyed it. Had a good weekend. Came back, and within a week or two after that, I had already been signed up for a time management class. And during this time management class, the instructor said, "Okay, we're going to do an exercise on goal setting. Please write down your major professional goal." Well, I didn't have one. So I raised my hand. I said, "I don't have one. What should I do?" He said, "Just make something up for purposes of the exercise." So having just come back from this academy seminar, I said, "Okay, I want to be the best family lawyer in Orlando." And he said, "Okay, well, write that down. Now, in order to be considered the best family lawyer in Orlando, what would you have to do?" I said, "Well, I'd have to be a fellow of the American Academy." "All right, well, write that down. Now, in order to become a fellow of the Academy, what would you have to do?" I said, "Well, I know I have to be board certified first." He said, "Okay, well, write that down."
Just breaking it down.
Yeah, and he did. And he worked me all the way back through that process to what I had to do on a daily basis in order to achieve that particular goal. Well, as I said, I hated insurance defense work, so I was looking for something else to do that would not require me taking a job and working for somebody else. And I had this plan written out, so I just did it. I mean, I just kind of went through the steps that I had already had in writing as part of a fictional exercise. And
Literally from that moment, that does that professor understand the future he gave you?
I don't even remember who it was at this point to call him and thank him. But in any event, it took me, in order to get board certified, you had to have practiced for at least 5 years and had a significant number of trials. So it took me to about 1990 to get my board certification. And then I did the academy application right on the heels of that. And almost immediately from the time I became a Academy Fellow, I started getting high-level referrals from other. And in my first year, I think, or maybe it was second year, I got the referral of two very prominent athletes who happened to live here in Central Florida. And I developed this reputation for doing athletes. So I got a number of pro athletes or their significant others, depending upon the nature of the litigation, as well as other complicated things. And one of my main marketing arms was speaking and writing. So I did a lot of speaking for the local bar and the state bar's family law section, and I ultimately got into leadership positions with those. Rose to be the chair of the executive council of the family law section of the Florida bar, and president of the Florida chapter of the American Academy. So it was just a progression as time went on.
That's incredible. Amazing that it all stemmed from that kind of one moment in a class where you didn't even have a goal.
Right, totally by accident. If I ever write a book, it's going to be called The Unintended Life.
It's a good title. As we go back and you're starting your firm, you got to learn how to be an entrepreneur. You have to learn about expenses and payroll and doing all the things. What were some of those kind of early lessons that you learned that maybe if I was starting a firm today, I could skip because you already paid the price for it?
There's a real simple answer to that too. I had the good fortune very early on after coming to Florida to get hooked up by a guy by the name of Mark Powers. And if you know Mark, you probably know him through his now company called Atticus. But back in those, and it's a law firm consulting practice. He's a business coach for lawyers. But back at that time, when it was Mark Powers Consulting, it was called MPC, Mark Powers Consulting, and he was mainly focused on marketing. And he taught me how to market myself. And then, once you get the hang of marketing, you kind of go on your way. Well, some years later, as I think I was chair-elect at that point of the family law section, Atticus had offered the chair and the chair-elect a spot in a program he was doing at the time. And by that time, it was Atticus. So I went into Atticus and realized that a lot of the things that were working really well for me in my practice, I'd gotten from Mark. And so I signed up for his new program, which was now Atticus. He realized that they start you with a book called The E-Myth. I don't know if you're familiar
Yep,
with The
great
E-Myth.
book.
So for the audience who is not, the E-Myth is that if you understand the technical aspects of your business, you understand your business. And that's just not true. We're not taught that in law school. We're taught how to research and write and torture the facts and create issues and do all those things that the lawyers are supposed to do. But we don't know anything about staffing or marketing or cash flow or systems and production and things of that nature. So he realized that before lawyers could be effective marketers, they had to be taught time management. And, as I said, I've already had a little bit of a time management background, so that was of interest to me. And so for many, many years, I worked with Mark and Atticus and just worked their program. So if I had any advice to a young lawyer who wanted to start their own firm, get a good business coach, get a good business consultant, and be diligent about it. It's kind of like having a personal trainer. Personal trainer is not going to run the miles for you, lift the weights, do the push-ups. They're a compliance officer. They tell you what to do and make sure you do it. And that's what business consulting is. They're not going to give you the answers. So it is a lot of work, and it's not inexpensive. But Mark made 3 promises to me when I was considering doing it. He said, I'm going to promise you're going to make at least 20% more money. You're going to spend at least 20% less time in the office, and you're going to have fun running your practice. And I said, Mark, you deliver on any one of those 3, and it's worth the cost of admission. And so that would be my major piece of advice. And then the second piece of advice is learn to market and leverage yourself by getting an associate or a support staff as soon as you possibly can. The only way to really make more money as an attorney is not by doing it all yourself. If you're doing it all yourself, you're just a high-priced wood chopper.
Well said. Richard, you come across to me as a guy who, when you hear something or you believe in something, you just do the steps, right? You were talking about the goal and how your professor broke it down to the day-to-day activities. And you mentioned like, well, I just did what I had to do each day. And that compound effect allowed you to reach success. And the same thing with Atticus, right? Like you just followed the coaching. I think for some people it's hard because, especially once they get out of law school, the confidence is high, right? They think, oh, now I'm going to go conquer the world. But in reality, it's like taking that opportunity to step back, say, it's okay that I don't know this. I'm going to go all in and just do the thing so that I can build the reps.
Yeah, as arrogant as I am, I think at least I was smart enough to know that I don't know everything and that I've always felt like work smarter, not harder. So why reinvent the wheel when you have successful people ready to teach you what it is you need to know? So it's definitely the case. The other problem that I'll mention when you're just starting your firm, and I'm going to back to that wood chopper analogy. The man was sitting out on his porch in a cabin he'd rented up in the mountains, and he was watching his neighbor chop wood. And in the morning, this guy was chopping wood to beat the band. I mean, he was stacking up piles of firewood, and he noticed that after lunch, his production had slowed way down. And he figured out, he said, I just realized his axe was dull. It wasn't working as well. So I walked over and I said, hey, man, why don't you sharpen your axe? And he said, can't, I'm too busy chopping wood. And so that's where we are, at the outset. You're so busy doing the technical aspects to, make sure a case is prepared properly and your witnesses, and doing these things that you don't have time to step back and sharpen your axe. And so that's the other important thing I think I would say to somebody who wants to run their own shop.
That's such a powerful statement. And it's so hard when you're in the thick of it, right? Like when you're in the mess and you have a deadline or a client's upset, it's the natural indication for us as humans is just put our head down and keep grinding.
Right.
But if you can't look above the clouds for a minute and see all the pieces, you're never going to get out.
Right. Yeah, you put your nose to the grindstone, and you're never going to do anything but grind off your nose. Step back, and is there a better way? Is there a better way that I can, and have goals? That was, I don't know how much more time we have on this, but the other thing I would mention that Mark taught us, the first program I went into was called Double Your Revenue. And the plan was to come up with a roadmap to double your revenue from whatever it was when you came in to some point in the future, whatever it is you set up. And it was a very detailed roadmap that, again, I worked what I had written down. I was able to double my firm's revenue in about 18 months. And
was that on your own?
That made me realize, because the other goal, the first thing he does is make your practice serve your life, not your life serve your practice. We're talking about that work-life balance, which has always been very important to me. And so he had you write down your lifetime goals first before we even got to the business stuff. And one of my big lifetime goals was travel. I wanted to see the world. And I realized that in order to do that, I had to have somebody back minding the shop. So I set out on a search for a partner in the enterprise who might share the same goals and help me reach it. And within, I think, 3 or 4 years of forming that arrangement, I was able to take 6 weeks off. And I didn't take a single phone call nor place a single phone call or email to the office in that 6 weeks.
That's incredible.
And you can do it. It's doable. Now I strive for 180 days a year off, and I don't get it every year, but some years I do.
As we're kind of just wrapping up here, Richard, on the personal side, what are you doing with that time? What's a favorite place you've been able to see? How can, as someone who's still very much in the grind and thinking about, I want to get to that level one day where I can travel and see the things. Give us a little preview of what the future looks like for us young entrepreneurs.
Well, here's what I would say. Number one, don't wait for the future. Use the good china today, and you just block it out. You just say, look, my life is important. I'm not going to live it in 6-minute intervals. I'm going to take this time, whatever it is you feel like you can afford, and reach a little bit. Again, that went back to Mark. He challenged me to take 4 weeks off, and I had to write him a blank $10,000 check that he was going to donate to a charity if I didn't do it. And I said, no worries here. I'm going to do it. So, but make yourself do it. That's when you have the time to decompress and think and model your future and come up with a plan when you're not caught in the daily grind of this client and this deadline and that deadline. And you can do it. I mean, it takes advanced planning. As I said, it took me, 3 or 4 years to do it, but don't wait for some unspecified time in the future. Make it a goal. I'm going to take whatever it is, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, a summer. I don't know if you have kids or people out there with young children, they grow up fast, so that would be my advice is make it a priority and not wait for it to happen.
It's so true. It's so true. Richard, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your insights, the learnings. I really hope that you enjoyed it as well, and we'd love to have you back on and continue this discussion.
Thank you. Anytime. Give me a call.
You got it. Thanks, everyone.